When a billionaire CEO asks her senior analyst to stay late, he expects spreadsheets, not a confession that she's lonely enough to need dating advice. Ethan Cole has spent 3 years keeping his head down, raising his daughter alone, and building walls high enough that no one at Cross Capital, especially not Vivian Cross herself, could see the man beneath the numbers. But tonight, in an empty office tower above a sleeping city, she hands him her phone and asks him to help her find love. What he doesn't expect is how much truth it will cost him to tell her why she can't. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The 53rd floor of Cross Capital was silent, except for the hum of the HVAC system and the faint tick of Ethan Cole's keyboard. It was nearly 11 on a Thursday night, and he was alone, or thought he was, running projections for a merger that wouldn't close for another 6 weeks. His daughter, Lucy, was asleep at his sister's apartment in Brooklyn. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, and his eyes burned from staring at columns of financial data that all said the same thing. The deal was sound, the risk minimal, the upside considerable. This was his life. Predictable, contained, safe. He liked it that way. Ethan was 34, lean and understated, the kind of man people didn't notice in meetings until he spoke. And even then, only if they were paying attention. He wore dark suits that fit well but weren't expensive, kept his brown hair short, and had the kind of face that looked younger than it was until you saw his eyes. Those told a different story. Tired, careful, guarded. He'd been at Cross Capital for 3 years, working his way up from analyst to senior analyst in the mergers and acquisitions division. He was good at his job. Excellent, actually. But he didn't draw attention to himself. He didn't go to happy hours. Didn't schmooze. Didn't play golf with the partners. He showed up early, stayed late when needed, delivered flawless work, and went home to his daughter. That was the deal he'd made with himself after the divorce. No distractions, no complications, no risks. Lucy was 7 now, sharp as a tack and twice as stubborn, with her mother's dark curls and Ethan's quiet intensity. She was the only thing in his life that mattered. Everything else, work, sleep, the occasional takeout dinner that wasn't macaroni and cheese, was just scaffolding around the center of his world. He was about to save the file and call it a night when he heard the elevator chime. Ethan frowned. Security made rounds, but they didn't usually come up this high. He glanced toward the glass doors that separated the executive suite from the analyst bullpen, expecting to see a uniform. Instead, he saw Vivian Cross. She stepped off the elevator like she owned the building, which technically she did, but there was something different about her tonight. She wasn't wearing the tailored armor she usually carried into board meetings. No sharp-shouldered blazer, no heels that clicked like a countdown. Instead, she had on dark jeans, a cashmere sweater the color of charcoal, and flat leather boots. Her blonde hair, usually pulled back in a sleek twist, fell loose around her shoulders. She looked human. Ethan's first instinct was to stand, but he caught himself. She hadn't seen him yet. She was walking toward her office, phone in hand, and he could leave quietly, slip out before she noticed, avoid whatever this was. But then she stopped, turned, looked directly at him through the glass. "Ethan?" Her voice carried across the empty floor, surprised but not displeased. She changed direction, heading toward him, and Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Vivian Cross didn't make social calls. If she was here this late, it was because something had gone wrong. A deal collapsing, a board member threatening revolt, a lawsuit he hadn't heard about yet. He stood as she approached, closing his laptop reflexively. "Ms. Cross," he said, keeping his tone neutral, "I didn't know you were still in the building." "I wasn't." She stopped a few feet from his desk, and he noticed she looked tired, not exhausted, but worn in a way that had nothing to do with work. "I came back. Saw your light on." Ethan waited. Vivian Cross didn't do small talk. "I need to ask you something," she said, and for the first time in 3 years he heard uncertainty in her voice. "And it's not about work." That should have been his cue to make an excuse, to say he had to get home, that his sister was waiting, that Lucy had school in the morning. All true, all valid, but he didn't. "All right," he said carefully. Vivian glanced around the empty floor, then back at him. "Can we sit?" Ethan gestured to the chair across from his desk. She took it, and he sat back down, feeling the strangeness of the moment settle over them. This wasn't how things worked. Vivian Cross didn't sit in analyst cubicles. She didn't show up at 11 at night looking uncertain. And she definitely didn't preface conversations with disclaimers about them not being work-related. She set her phone on his desk, screen down. "I'm going to say something," she began, "and I need you to not immediately think I've lost my mind." Ethan's expression didn't change, but his pulse picked up. "Okay. I need help with my dating profile." For a long moment, Ethan just stared at her. Then he said, very slowly, "Your dating profile." "Yes, you have a dating profile." "I do." Vivian's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Surprised?" Ethan didn't answer that. He was too busy recalibrating. Vivian Cross was 41, a self-made billionaire who'd built Cross Capital from nothing, one of the most powerful women in finance, and frequently described in the press as formidable. She'd been married once, briefly, in her 20s. Ethan had read that in a Forbes profile, but he'd never heard her mention dating, never seen her with anyone, never even heard office gossip suggest she had a personal life. "I'm not surprised you're looking," he said finally, choosing his words with care. "I'm surprised you're asking me." "You're direct," Vivian said. "You don't sugarcoat things, and you're one of the few people here who doesn't treat me like I'm made of glass or money." Ethan considered that. It was true. He'd never been intimidated by her, not in the way others were. Respectful, yes. Cautious, absolutely. But not afraid. Maybe because he had nothing to prove and nothing to lose. He wasn't gunning for partner, wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just did his job and went home. "What kind of help?" he asked. Vivian picked up her phone, unlocked it, and handed it to him. "Tell me why this isn't working." Ethan looked down at the screen. It was a profile on one of those high-end dating apps, the kind that required references and background checks, where memberships cost more than most people's monthly rent. Vivian's profile photo was professional but warm, her standing in front of a city skyline at sunset, smiling slightly, looking confident and composed. He scrolled through the rest. Vivian, 41, CEO, Manhattan. Looking for someone intellectually curious, ambitious, and comfortable with success. I value honesty, independence, and meaningful conversation. No games, no drama. If you can't keep up, swipe left. Interests: economics, art collecting, international travel, fine dining. Ethan read it twice, and then he set the phone down and looked at her. "You want the truth?" he asked. "That's why I'm here." "It's perfect." Vivian blinked. "Then why am I not getting any matches I actually want to meet?" "Because," Ethan said quietly, "it's not a dating profile. It's a job posting." The words hung in the air between them. Vivian didn't flinch, didn't get defensive. She just watched him, waiting. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You're telling people what you require, not who you are. It's a list of qualifications. And the tone?" He paused, picking his words carefully. "It's not warm, it's a warning." "A warning," Vivian repeated. "Yeah. If you can't keep up, swipe left? That's not inviting. It's a challenge. And the whole thing reads like you're interviewing candidates, not looking for a connection." Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "So what you're saying is, I sound like myself." "You sound like the version of yourself you bring to board meetings," Ethan corrected. "The one who's in control, who doesn't need anyone, who's untouchable." Something shifted in Vivian's expression. Not hurt exactly. Recognition. "And that's not attractive," she said. "It's intimidating," Ethan said. "Which might be what you want professionally, but if you're trying to meet someone..." He trailed off, shrugging. "People don't fall for resumes." Vivian picked up her phone again, staring at the screen. "So what do they fall for?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He thought about the question, really thought about it, and realized he didn't know. He hadn't dated since the divorce. Hadn't wanted to. Hadn't had time, energy, or interest. His life was full enough with Lucy, work, and the careful routines that kept both of those things running smoothly. But he remembered what it had been like before. before his ex-wife decided she wanted something bigger than their small life, before she left and took half his heart with her. Honesty, he said finally, not the polished kind, the real kind, the stuff that makes you human. Vivian looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Show me." "Show you what?" "How to write it, honestly." Ethan shook his head. "Ms. Cross—" "Vivian," she interrupted. "If we're doing this, call me Vivian." "Vivian's," he repeated, the name strange on his tongue. "I don't think this is a good idea." "Why not?" "Because I work for you. Because this is—" He gestured vaguely between them. "It's crossing a line." "The line," Vivian said calmly, "is me asking you to do work you're not paid for. This is me asking a favor. From someone whose judgment I trust. You can say no." She said it simply, without pressure, and Ethan believed her. He could say no. He could stand up, wish her luck, and leave. But he didn't. Maybe it was because she'd said favor instead of order. Maybe it was because he recognized the loneliness in her voice. The same loneliness he carried home every night and tucked away where Lucy couldn't see it. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in 3 years, someone was asking him to be something other than efficient. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's rewrite it." Vivian pulled her chair closer to his desk. Ethan opened a notes app on his phone and handed it to her. "Start over," he said. "Forget the profile you wrote. Forget what you think people want to hear. Just tell me about yourself. The real stuff." Vivian looked at him skeptically. "Like what?" "Like what you do when you're not working." "I'm always working." "You're not working right now." She conceded the point with a slight nod. "I read," she said after a moment, "old novels, mostly, 19th century stuff. Austen, Eliot, the Brontes. I know it's cliché, but I like the language. The way they built entire worlds out of drawing rooms and letters." Ethan typed that in, paraphrasing. "What else?" "I make tea," Vivian said. "Strong black tea, first thing in the morning. I stand by the window and drink it while the city wakes up. It's the only time the apartment feels quiet." "Do you live alone?" "Yes." "Do you like it?" Vivian hesitated. "I'm used to it." That wasn't an answer, and they both knew it. Ethan typed, "Looking for someone to share the quiet moments with." "What do you do to unwind?" he asked. "I cook," Vivian said. "Pasta, usually. From scratch. It's repetitive and precise, and I don't have to think about anything except the dough." Ethan added that. Then he asked, "What do you want? Not in a partner's resume. In a person." Vivian was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "I want someone who doesn't need me to be impressive. Someone who sees me and doesn't flinch." Ethan stopped typing. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the truth she was offering him. This wasn't about fixing a profile. It was about being seen. "Okay," he said. "Then say that." They worked for another 20 minutes, stripping away the corporate language, the defenses, the requirements. What emerged was something simpler, warmer, and infinitely more vulnerable. Vivian, 41. Manhattan. I spend my days building things and my evenings trying to remember how to slow down. I read old novels, make tea at sunrise, and cook pasta when I need to think. I'm looking for someone who values quiet connection over loud gestures. Someone who doesn't need me to be anything other than myself. If you're comfortable with silence and honest conversation, we might get along. Ethan handed her the phone. Vivian read it twice, then looked up at him. "This doesn't sound like me," she said. "It sounds exactly like you," Ethan countered. "Just not the version you show everyone else." Vivian saved the draft but didn't publish it. She set the phone down and leaned back in her chair, studying him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You've been asking me things for the last half hour." "Something personal?" Ethan tensed. "Maybe." "Are you seeing anyone?" "No." "Why not?" The question was direct but not invasive, just curious. Ethan considered deflecting, giving some bland answer about being busy. But she'd been honest with him. It seemed only fair to return the favor. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's 7. Her mother and I divorced 3 years ago, and Lucy's been through enough without me bringing someone new into her life who might not stay." "So you don't date?" "I don't date," Ethan confirmed. "That sounds lonely." "It's practical." Vivian tilted her head slightly. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." Ethan didn't argue. She was right. "What about you?" he asked, turning the question back on her. "Why now? Why dating apps?" Vivian smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. "Because I'm 41, and I've built everything I set out to build. And when I go home at night, the apartment is beautiful and empty, and I realize I don't have anyone to share it with. I thought, maybe it was time to try." There was something achingly honest in that admission, and Ethan felt the weight of it settle between them. "I think you'll find someone," he said quietly. "Do you? If you use that profile?" "Yes." Vivian looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan couldn't quite read her expression. Then she stood, picking up her phone. "Thank you," she said, "for your honesty and your time." "You're welcome." She started toward the elevator, then paused and looked back. "Ethan?" "Yes?" "You should date." He blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "You're smart, kind, and a good father. Someone would be lucky to have you in their life." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was stating a market analysis. "Don't let fear make your decisions for you." Before Ethan could respond, she stepped into the elevator and was gone. He sat in the empty office for a long time after that, staring at the space where she'd been, wondering what the hell had just happened. 2 weeks passed before Ethan saw Vivian again. He'd been busy with the merger, putting in long hours as the deal moved toward closing. He thought about her sometimes, wondered if she'd published the new profile, if it had worked, if she'd met someone. But he didn't ask, didn't follow up. That conversation had been a strange, singular moment, and he wasn't sure it warranted a sequel. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, his phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. "Ms. Cross would like to see you in her office at 5 o'clock p.m. Please confirm." Ethan confirmed, his stomach nodding slightly. He ran through the last 2 weeks of work in his mind, trying to figure out if he'd screwed something up. But nothing stood out. The merger was on track. His reports had been thorough. He hadn't missed any deadlines. At 5, he took the elevator to the executive floor and knocked on Vivian's door. "Come in." She was sitting at her desk, but she looked up when he entered and gestured to the chair across from her. "Close the door," she said. Ethan did, then sat down, waiting. Vivian studied him for a moment, and he couldn't read her expression. Then she said, "The profile worked." "That's good," Ethan said carefully. "I've been on 4 dates in the last 2 weeks. "And?" Vivian sighed. "They were all perfectly nice, intelligent, successful, exactly what I said I was looking for. But none of them felt real." She leaned back in her chair, looking frustrated. "It's like they showed up with their own profiles memorized. They asked the right questions, said the right things, laughed at the right moments. And the whole time, I kept thinking." She trailed off. "Thinking what?" Ethan asked. Vivian looked at him directly. "That I'd rather be talking to you." The air in the room shifted. Ethan felt his pulse spike, a warning bell going off in the back of his mind. He should stand up, make an excuse, leave before this conversation went somewhere he couldn't come back from. But he didn't move. "Ms. Cross, I told you to call me Vivian." "Vivian," he said, his voice tight. "I think you should be careful what you're saying." "I'm always careful," she said. "That's the problem." Ethan shook his head. We can't." "I'm not asking you to do anything," Vivian said quietly. "I'm just telling you the truth. You said people fall for honesty, so I'm being honest." "Why?" The word came out sharper than he intended. "Why me? You don't know me. We've had one real conversation." "I know you're the only person in this building who talks to me like I'm a person, not a title," Vivian said. "I know you're thoughtful and direct, and you don't say things you don't mean. I know you care more about doing good work than getting credit for it. And I know She hesitated, then continued. I know you understand what it's like to be lonely, even when you're surrounded by people. Ethan felt something crack open inside his chest, something he'd kept sealed for 3 years. This is a bad idea, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Probably, Vivian agreed, but I'm tired of good ideas that leave me sitting alone in an empty apartment, aren't you? Ethan thought about his own apartment, the routines he'd built, the walls he'd carefully constructed. Lucy asleep in her room, the only person he let inside, the quiet, manageable life that kept him safe. And he thought about what Vivian had said to him that night. Don't let fear make your decisions for you. I have a daughter, he said, his last line of defense. I know. If this goes wrong, and it probably will, it's not just me who gets hurt. I know that too. Then why are you doing this? Vivian leaned forward, resting her arms on her desk. Because I looked at every profile, went on every date, and kept comparing them to the person who helped me write the damn thing. And I realized I don't want someone who checks boxes. I want someone who sees me. And you do, Ethan. You saw me when I didn't even see myself. Ethan closed his eyes. He was standing at the edge of something vast and terrifying, and every instinct he had was screaming at him to step back. But when he opened his eyes, Vivian was still there, looking at him with an expression that was equal parts hope and fear. And he realized he was tired of stepping back. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. Neither do I, Vivian admitted. But maybe we figure it out together. Ethan took a breath, let it out slowly. Then he said, okay. The word hung in the air between them, fragile and enormous. Vivian smiled, really smiled, for the first time since he'd met her, and Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. He had no idea what he'd just agreed to, but for the first time in 3 years, he wanted to find out. The next morning, Ethan woke up at 6:15, same as always, and spent the first 10 minutes staring at his ceiling, wondering if he'd made a catastrophic mistake. The conversation with Vivian felt surreal in the gray light of dawn, like something that had happened to someone else, in some alternate version of his life where he took risks and said yes to impossible things. But it had happened. He'd said okay, and now he had to figure out what that meant. Lucy was already awake when he walked into the kitchen, sitting at the table with a bowl of cereal and a library book about sharks. She looked up at him with her mother's dark eyes and said, "You look weird." "Good morning to you too," Ethan said, heading for the coffee maker. "Did you sleep bad?" "Not great." "How come?" "Because I might be starting something with my boss that could destroy my career and upend our entire life." "Work stuff," he said instead. "Nothing important." Lucy studied him for a moment, then went back to her book. She was getting better at reading him, and Ethan wasn't sure how he felt about that. He'd spent 3 years trying to be steady, predictable, unshakable, the kind of father who didn't bring his problems home. But Lucy was sharp. She noticed things. He poured his coffee and sat down across from her. "What are you reading?" "About hammerhead sharks. Did you know their eyes are on the sides of their heads so they can see almost everything around them?" "I didn't know that." "It's so they don't get surprised by predators." Lucy turned a page. "I think that would be useful." Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah, it would be." They finished breakfast in comfortable silence, then Ethan walked her to the bus stop 3 blocks away. It was October, and the morning air had that sharp, clean quality that made the city feel almost manageable. Lucy held his hand until they reached the corner, then let go. She was 7, old enough to think hand-holding was babyish, but young enough that she sometimes forgot to care. "Dad?" she said as the bus pulled up. "Yeah?" "Are you okay? Like, really okay?" Ethan looked down at her, at the worry creasing her small forehead, and felt his chest tighten. "I'm really okay," he said. "I promise." Lucy nodded, satisfied, and climbed onto the bus. Ethan watched until it turned the corner, then headed for the subway. He had no idea how he was going to face Vivian at work. The office was busy when he arrived. Merger closing week always was, and Ethan threw himself into the chaos gratefully. He had emails to answer, contracts to review, 3 conference calls scheduled back to back. He could lose himself in the work, let the numbers and clauses crowd out everything else. It worked until 2:30 when his desk phone rang. "Ethan Cole," he answered automatically. "It's Vivian." Her voice was calm, professional. "Do you have a minute?" Ethan's stomach dropped. "Yes." "Meet me on the roof terrace in 5 minutes." She hung up before he could respond. Ethan sat frozen for a moment, then stood and headed for the elevator. The roof terrace was technically a shared amenity space, but almost no one used it. It was too cold in winter, too hot in summer, and the view wasn't any better than what you could see from the office windows, which made it the most private place in the building. Vivian was already there when he stepped outside. She was standing near the edge, looking out at the city, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. She turned when she heard the door. "Thanks for coming up," she said. Ethan walked over slowly, stopping a careful distance away. "Is everything all right?" "That depends." Vivian's expression was unreadable. "Are you panicking?" "A little," Ethan admitted. "Good. So am I." That startled a laugh out of him. Vivian smiled slightly, and some of the tension in Ethan's shoulders eased. "I've been thinking about last night," she said, "about what I said and what you agreed to, and I realized we didn't actually talk about what this is." "No," Ethan said, "we didn't. So let's talk about it now." Vivian turned to face him fully. "I don't want to complicate your life, Ethan, and I don't want to do anything that could hurt your daughter. So if you want to pretend last night didn't happen, we can do that. I'll understand." Ethan studied her. She meant it. He could see that. She was giving him an out, a clean exit, no hard feelings. All he had to do was take it. "What do you want?" he asked instead. Vivian was quiet for a moment. "I want to see if this is real," she said finally. "I want to have dinner with you. Talk to you when we're not at work. Figure out if what I felt the other night was just loneliness or something more. And if it's something more, then we'll deal with that when we get there." It was a reasonable answer, practical, cautious. Everything Ethan usually valued, but there was something in her voice, something vulnerable and uncertain, that told him she was as terrified as he was. "Dinner," he said slowly. "Just dinner." "Just dinner," Vivian agreed. "No pressure, no expectations, just two people trying to figure out if they actually like each other outside of a professional context." Ethan took a breath. "Okay, when?" "Saturday night, 7 o'clock. There's a small Italian place in the West Village, Luca's. Do you know it?" "No." "It's quiet, the kind of place where no one will recognize me." Vivian paused. "Or care." "Saturday," Ethan repeated, committing it to memory. "I'll need to make sure my sister can watch Lucy." "Of course. If it doesn't work, we'll pick another night." They stood there for a moment, the wind pulling at Vivian's hair, the city sprawling out below them in every direction. Ethan had lived in New York his entire life, but he'd never looked at it from this angle before. It felt strange and new, like seeing a familiar thing transformed by perspective. "I should get back," Vivian said. "Board call in 10 minutes." "Right. Yeah." She started toward the door, then stopped and looked back at him. "Ethan?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not running." Before he could answer, she was gone. Ethan stood on the roof for another 5 minutes, letting the cold air clear his head. Then he went back to his desk and tried to remember what the hell he was supposed to be working on. Saturday came faster than Ethan expected. He spent Friday night explaining to Lucy that he had plans, just dinner with a friend from work, and watching her face carefully for any sign of distress. But she just shrugged and said, "Okay, can Aunt Jenny take me to the museum?" "I'm sure she will, if you ask nicely." "I always ask nicely," Lucy said, which was only partially true. His sister Rachel showed up at 6:30 Saturday evening, took one look at Ethan and said, "You're nervous." "I'm not nervous." "You're wearing the blue shirt. You only wear the blue shirt when you're trying to make a good impression." Rachel grinned. "Who is she?" "Nobody, just someone from work." "Uh-huh. Does this someone from work have a name?" "Rachel." "Fine, be mysterious, but you look good. Whoever she is, she's lucky." Ethan kissed Lucy goodbye, ignored his sister's knowing look, and took the subway to the West Village. Luca's was tucked into a narrow street off 7th Avenue, the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. Small, unassuming, exactly what Vivian had promised. She was already there when he walked in, sitting at a corner table with her back to the wall. She'd changed out of her work clothes into a simple black dress and a soft gray cardigan, and her hair was down again. She looked up when he approached, and her expression shifted into something warm and uncertain. "You came," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I wasn't sure." Ethan sat down across from her. The restaurant was dimly lit, warm, filled with the smell of garlic and fresh bread. There were maybe a dozen other tables, all occupied, but the noise level was low. Conversation, not performance. "Have you been here before?" Ethan asked. "A few times. It's one of the only places I can eat without someone taking my picture." Vivian smiled faintly. The owner's grandmother was the original chef. She didn't care who you were as long as you appreciated the food. A waiter appeared and handed them menus. Vivian ordered wine, a Chianti, and Ethan nodded when the waiter looked at him questioningly. "So," Vivian said once they were alone again, "how was your week?" "Long. Yours?" "Same. I spent 3 hours in a meeting about regulatory compliance and wanted to set myself on fire." Ethan laughed. "That bad?" "Worse. The only thing that got me through it was knowing I had this to look forward to." She paused. "Is that too honest?" "No," Ethan said. "I like honest." The wine arrived. They ordered food, pasta for both of them, Vivian's recommendation, and settled into the strange, careful rhythm of a first date. They talked about work, but only glancingly. About the city. About books. Vivian asked about Lucy, and Ethan found himself talking more than he expected. About her obsession with sharks, her stubborn streak, the way she read with total absorption and forgot the world existed. "She sounds remarkable," Vivian said. "She is." "Does she know you're here?" "She knows I'm having dinner with someone from work. I didn't—" Ethan hesitated. "I didn't want to tell her more until I knew what this was." "That's smart." Vivian's expression softened. "You're protecting her." "I'm trying to." Their food arrived, and they ate slowly, the conversation drifting into easier territory. Vivian told him about learning to cook from her mother, who'd grown up in Naples and treated recipes like sacred texts. Ethan talked about his father, a high school math teacher who'd taught him to see patterns in everything. "He used to say the world was just numbers pretending to be chaos," Ethan said. "I didn't understand what he meant until I started working in finance." "Is he still teaching?" "He died when I was 22. Heart attack." "I'm sorry." "It was a long time ago." Ethan took a sip of wine. "But thank you." Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My father died 3 years ago. Lung cancer. He smoked for 40 years and refused to quit until it was too late." "Were you close?" "No, he thought I was wasting my life chasing money when I should have been chasing a husband." Vivian's smile was brittle. "We didn't speak for the last 5 years of his life. I found out he was sick for my mother, and by the time I flew back to see him, he was already gone." Ethan heard the regret in her voice, the weight of unfinished business. "That must have been hard." "It was. Still is sometimes." Vivian set down her fork. "I tell myself he was wrong, that building Cross Capital was worth it, that I made the right choice. But late at night, when the apartment's quiet, I wonder if he had a point." "Do you really believe that?" "I don't know. Maybe." Vivian looked at him. "Do you ever regret your choices?" Ethan thought about his ex-wife, about the fights they'd had, the slow unraveling of their marriage, the day she told him she was leaving. "Every day," he said quietly. "But then I look at Lucy, and I can't regret anything that led to her." "That's a good answer. It's the truth." They finished dinner and ordered coffee. The restaurant had emptied out, and they were one of only 3 tables left. The waiter brought them tiramisu without asking. "On the house," he said with a wink at Vivian, and they shared it in comfortable silence. "I have a question," Vivian said eventually. "All right. Why did you say yes to this, to me?" Ethan considered the question. He could give her a careful answer, something diplomatic and safe. But she'd been honest with him all night. She deserved the same. "Because I'm tired," he said. I've spent 3 years keeping my head down and my life small, and it's worked. I've been fine. But fine isn't the same as happy, and I think, he paused, searching for the right words. I think I forgot what it felt like to want something just because I wanted it, not because it was smart or safe, just because it mattered. Vivian's eyes were bright in the candlelight. And this matters. I think it might. She reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, her grip firm, and Ethan felt something settle into place inside him. Something he hadn't known was missing. I'm glad you came, Vivian said softly. So am I. They left the restaurant just after 10 and walked slowly through the quiet streets. The night was cold but clear, and the city felt almost peaceful. They didn't talk much, just walked side by side, shoulders occasionally brushing, and Ethan found himself thinking that this was what he'd been missing. Not grand gestures or dramatic confessions, just this, presence, connection. Someone who saw him. When they reached the subway entrance, Vivian stopped. I should let you go, she said. You have to get back to Lucy. Yeah. Ethan didn't move. Can we do this again? Yes. Vivian smiled, and it was the same smile from that night in the office, real and unguarded. Good. I'll text you. She leaned up and kissed his cheek, quick and warm, then turned and walked toward the street to hail a cab. Ethan watched until she was gone, then headed down into the subway, his face still tingling from where her lips had touched his skin. He made it home by 11. Rachel was asleep on the couch, and Lucy was in bed. Ethan paid his sister, assured her the dinner had been fine, and locked the door behind her. Then he sat in the dark living room and let himself feel everything he'd been holding back all night. Hope, fear, the terrifying possibility that this might actually work. He was so screwed. The text started the next morning. Nothing heavy, just small moments of contact. Vivian sent him a picture of her tea at sunrise with the caption, Thought of our conversation. Ethan sent back a photo of Lucy's shark book. She's moved on to great whites. They texted throughout the week, little threads of conversation woven between work obligations. Vivian told him about a disastrous investor call. Ethan shared a story about Lucy's school play audition. It was easy, natural, and it made the days feel lighter. But at work, they were careful, professional. They didn't meet privately, didn't linger in conversations, maintained the careful distance of boss and employee. It worked until the following Thursday, when Ethan ran into Marcus Chen in the break room. Marcus was another senior analyst, ambitious and sharp-edged, the kind of guy who treated every interaction like a competition. He looked up when Ethan walked in and said, Hey, Cole, saw you leaving the building with Vivian last Tuesday. Ethan's pulse spiked, but he kept his expression neutral. We were heading to the same meeting. In the West Village? At 7 p.m.? Ethan poured coffee slowly, buying time. We had dinner. She wanted to discuss the merger. Right, the merger. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Funny. I heard she took you to Luca's. That's not really a business dinner kind of place. What's your point, Marcus? No point. Just interesting, that's all. Vivian doesn't usually do dinner meetings, especially not with analysts. He leaned against the counter. Just be careful, man. People talk. Ethan met his gaze evenly. There's nothing to talk about. If you say so. Marcus left, and Ethan stood there gripping his coffee cup, his stomach churning. He'd been naive to think they could keep this quiet. Manhattan was a small world, and Cross Capital was smaller. People noticed things, drew conclusions, and once the rumors started, they'd be impossible to stop. He texted Vivian, We need to talk. She replied immediately, Roof Terrace, 4 p.m. Ethan spent the next 2 hours trying to focus on work and failing. When 4 o'clock came, he headed upstairs and found Vivian already waiting. What happened? She asked as soon as the door closed. Ethan told her about Marcus, about the knowing look, the careful questions, the implication that people were watching. Vivian's expression hardened. Marcus Chen is an opportunistic ass who's been gunning for partners since the day he started. He's trying to rattle you. He succeeded. Ethan, Vivian stepped closer. We had dinner, that's all. We didn't break any rules. Not yet, Ethan said quietly. But if this keeps going, if we keep seeing each other, it's going to become a problem. You're my boss. That's a line we can't cross. I know. So what do we do? Vivian was silent for a long moment. Then she said, we could stop. Call this what it was. 2 dinners and some texts. Walk away before it gets complicated. Ethan's chest tightened. Is that what you want? No. Her voice was fierce. But I won't let this hurt you. Or Lucy. If staying away from me protects you, I'll do it. And if I don't want you to stay away? Vivian looked at him, and Ethan saw his own conflict mirrored in her eyes. Want and fear, hope and pragmatism. Then we have to be smart, she said finally. No more dinners in public. No more leaving the building together. We keep this completely separate from work until we figure out what it is. That could take months, Dewitt. I know. And people are already suspicious. Let them be suspicious. As long as we're not doing anything wrong, they can't prove anything. Vivian's jaw set. I'm not giving this up, Ethan. Not because Marcus Chen wants to make trouble. Not because people might gossip. I'm 41 years old, and I've spent my entire adult life being careful and appropriate and doing what I'm supposed to do. And I'm done. Ethan stared at her. He'd never heard her sound like this, defiant and reckless and absolutely certain. Okay, he said. Okay? Yeah, we'll be smart, we'll be careful, but we don't stop. Vivian exhaled, and some of the tension left her shoulders. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could still blow up in both our faces. I know, but I'd rather take the risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened. She was standing close enough that Ethan could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. Close enough that he could see the silver threading through her blonde hair, the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. Close enough to kiss. But he didn't. Not here. Not at work. I should go, he said. Lucy's expecting me. Of course. Vivian stepped back, creating space between them. I'll text you tonight. Ethan nodded and left before he could change his mind. That night, after Lucy was asleep, his phone buzzed. Vivian. I meant what I said. About not giving this up. Ethan. I know. Me too. Vivian. Where does that leave us? Ethan stared at the screen, thinking about Marcus's knowing smile, about the careful distance they'd have to maintain, about all the ways this could go wrong. Then he thought about Vivian's hand in his at dinner, the way she'd looked at him on the roof, the feeling of being seen. Ethan. It leaves us trying, carefully, but trying. Vivian. I can work with that. Ethan. Good, because I don't think I could walk away now even if I wanted to. Vivian. You're in trouble, Ethan Cole. Ethan. Yeah, I know. He set the phone down and closed his eyes, feeling the weight of what he'd just committed to. This wasn't going to be easy. It might not even be possible. But for the first time in 3 years, he wanted something badly enough to fight for it. And that, Ethan thought, was either the bravest or stupidest thing he'd ever done. Probably both. They managed 3 more weeks of careful distance before everything started unraveling. 3 weeks of stolen moments between meetings, of texts that said more than they should, of Ethan lying awake at night thinking about a woman he couldn't have in any conventional way. 3 weeks of Vivian finding excuses to stop by his desk, of their fingers brushing when she handed him files, of looking up in conference rooms to find her watching him with an expression that made his chest ache. 3 weeks of pretending they were just colleagues while the truth hummed between them like a live wire. Then Marcus Chen got promoted to partner. The announcement came on a Wednesday morning via company-wide email. Ethan read it twice, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. Marcus had been gunning for this for years, and he'd finally gotten it, which meant he now had real power. Enough power to make Ethan's life difficult if he wanted to. Vivian called an emergency partners meeting that afternoon. Ethan wasn't invited, but he heard about it secondhand from Sarah Kim, another analyst who had friends in the executive suite. Apparently Vivian was pissed, Sarah said, perched on the edge of Ethan's desk. The board pushed the promotion through without her full approval. She wanted to wait another quarter, but they overruled her. Why would they do that? Sarah shrugged. Marcus has been playing golf with half the board members, building relationships. You know how it works. Ethan did know. It was exactly the kind of political maneuvering he'd always avoided, and exactly the kind that got people ahead. Anyway, Sarah continued, rumor is Vivian stormed out of the meeting. First time anyone's seen her lose her temper in years. After Sarah left, Ethan sat staring at his computer screen, not seeing the numbers. If Vivian had opposed Marcus's promotion and been overruled, Marcus would know. And if Marcus knew, he'd be looking for ways to prove himself, to consolidate his new power. Which meant anyone perceived as a threat, or anyone associated with Vivian in a way that seemed questionable, would be a target. Ethan's phone buzzed. Vivian, can you come up now? He took the elevator to the executive floor and found Vivian in her office, standing by the window with her arms crossed. She didn't turn when he closed the door. You heard, she said. About Marcus? Yeah. The board thinks I'm being territorial, that I can't handle other people having power. Vivian's voice was tight. They don't understand that Marcus is reckless. He takes shortcuts. He's going to cost us eventually, and when he does, it'll be my reputation on the line. Ethan walked over slowly. What can I do? Vivian finally turned to look at him. Her expression was strained, and he could see the anger barely contained beneath the surface. Nothing. That's the problem. This isn't something you can analyze or fix. It's politics, and I hate politics. I know. She sighed and rubbed her temples. I'm sorry. I didn't bring you up here to vent. Then why did you bring me up here? Vivian dropped her hands and looked at him directly. Because I needed to see you. Because you're the only person in this building who doesn't want something from me. She paused. And because I'm about to make a decision that's going to affect both of us. And I wanted to tell you first. Ethan's stomach tightened. What decision? I'm restructuring the M&A division, creating a new senior role, Director of Strategic Analysis. It'll report directly to Marcus instead of me. Vivian's eyes didn't leave his face. I'm offering it to you. Ethan stared at her. What? It's a promotion, better title, better pay, more responsibility, and it removes the direct reporting relationship between us. Vivian's voice was steady, but he could hear the strain underneath, which means we wouldn't be violating any ethics policies if we kept seeing each other. You're creating a job just to solve our problem. I'm creating a job because the division needs it, and you're the best person for it. The fact that it also happens to solve our problem is a bonus. Ethan shook his head slowly. People will talk. They'll say you're playing favorites, that I got promoted because we're... He stopped, not knowing how to finish the sentence. Because we're what? Vivian asked quietly. Dating. We haven't even called it that. Because there's something between us, whatever we're calling it. Let them talk. The work speaks for itself. You've delivered on every project I've given you for 3 years. You've earned this. Marcus will know why you're doing it. Marcus can think whatever he wants. He doesn't get a vote. Vivian stepped closer. Ethan, I'm not trying to manipulate you. If you don't want the promotion, say no. If you think this is moving too fast, tell me. But I need you to understand something. Her voice dropped. I'm 41 years old. I've built a company worth billions. I've sat on boards, advised presidents, been called one of the most powerful women in finance. And none of it means anything compared to how I feel when I'm with you. Ethan's breath caught. Vivian, I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I also know that if I let this slip away because I'm too scared to fight for it, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. She reached out and took his hand. So I'm fighting, and I need to know if you're fighting too, or if I'm doing this alone. Ethan looked down at their joined hands, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This was the moment, the point of no return. If he said yes, everything would change. His job, his relationship with Vivian, the careful stability he'd built for Lucy. But if he said no, he'd spend the rest of his life wondering what might have been. I'm fighting, he said quietly, but I need you to understand something too. I have a daughter, and if this goes wrong, if it blows up and becomes public and ugly, she's the one who pays the price. Not me, not you, her. I know. So we have to be careful, smarter than careful. We can't afford mistakes. Vivian nodded. Agreed. We take this slow. We keep it private. And the second it starts affecting Lucy, we reevaluate. Okay. Ethan took a breath. Then yes, I'll take the promotion. Vivian's expression softened into something that looked like relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I still think this could blow up in our faces. Probably, Vivian agreed. But at least we'll be together when it does. She squeezed his hand once, then let go and stepped back, rebuilding the professional distance between them. I'll announce the restructuring tomorrow. Marcus will push back, but I don't care. The board will approve it. And then what? And then we figure out what this is, you and me. No more stolen moments, no more pretending. Vivian's eyes met his. Real dates, real conversations, a real chance. Ethan felt something warm unfold in his chest. I'd like that. Good, because I'm taking you to dinner Friday night. Somewhere nice, somewhere we don't have to hide. I'll need to find a sitter for Lucy. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. The announcement went out Thursday morning. Marcus showed up at Ethan's desk an hour later, expression neutral but eyes hard. Congratulations, he said. Director of Strategic Analysis, big step up. Thanks. Funny timing, though, right after I make partner. Marcus smiled thinly. Almost like Vivian wanted to make sure you weren't reporting to me. Ethan kept his voice level. The timing's coincidental. The division's been growing. The role was needed. Right, needed. Marcus leaned against the cubicle wall. Word of advice, Cole. When you're sleeping with the CEO, try to be less obvious about it. People aren't stupid. The words hit like a physical blow, but Ethan didn't react. I'm not sleeping with anyone. And even if I were, it wouldn't be your business. It's everyone's business when it affects the company. When promotions go to people who happen to be fucking the boss instead of people who actually earned them. Ethan stood slowly, keeping his movements controlled. I've earned everything I have here. My work speaks for itself. And if you've got a problem with Vivian's decisions, take it up with her, not me. Marcus's smile widened. Oh, I will, trust me. He pushed off the wall and started to walk away, then paused. By the way, how's your daughter? Lucy, right? 7 years old? Must be tough raising a kid alone, especially when you're busy with after-work activities. The implication was clear, and Ethan felt rage flash through him, white-hot and dangerous. Stay away from my daughter. Relax. I'm just saying kids need stability, and when their parents make bad choices, they're the ones who suffer. Marcus's expression was all false sympathy. Something to think about. He walked away, leaving Ethan standing frozen, hands clenched into fists. It took everything he had not to follow Marcus and finish the conversation with his fists instead of words. But that would only prove Marcus right, that Ethan couldn't handle the pressure, that he was out of his depth. So he sat back down and forced himself to breathe. His phone buzzed 5 minutes later. Vivian. Marcus just left my office. Are you okay? Ethan. He came to see me first, made some accusations, brought up Lucy. Vivian. What? Ethan. Nothing direct, just implications, but he's trying to get under my skin. Vivian. I'm going to fire him. Ethan. You can't. He's a partner now, and firing him would just prove we have something to hide. There was a long pause before her next message came through. Vivian. I hate that he's right about that. But you're correct. Firing him would be worse. So what do we do? Ethan stared at the question, thinking about Marcus's smile, his casual cruelty, the way he'd weaponized Lucy's existence, thinking about the rumors that would spread, the whispers in conference rooms, the looks from colleagues who'd wonder if Ethan had really earned his promotion or just slept his way into it. And he thought about Vivian, about the way she looked at him like he mattered, about the possibility of something real and good and worth fighting for. Ethan. We prove him wrong. We do the work, keep our heads down, and don't give him anything to use against us. And we keep seeing each other, carefully, but we don't stop. Vivian. You're sure? Ethan. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Vivian. That might be the bravest thing I've ever heard. Ethan. Or the stupidest. Vivian. Both can be true. Friday night, Ethan told Lucy he had plans again. She looked up from her homework with a knowing expression that was far too old for 7. Another work dinner? She asked. Yeah. With the same person? Ethan hesitated. He'd never lied to Lucy, and he wasn't going to start now. But he also wasn't ready to explain something he didn't fully understand himself. Yes, he said carefully. With the same person. Is she nice? She is. Lucy studied him for a long moment. Are you happy when you're with her? The question caught Ethan off guard. I think so. Yeah. Then, okay. Lucy went back to her homework, apparently satisfied. Ethan stood there for a moment, wondering when his daughter had gotten so perceptive. Then he kissed the top of her head and went to get ready. Vivian had chosen a restaurant in Tribeca, upscale but not ostentatious, the kind of place where privacy was valued and cameras weren't welcome. Ethan arrived first and waited at the bar, nursing a whiskey and trying not to feel like he was about to jump off a cliff. Then Vivian walked in and everything else fell away. She was wearing a deep blue dress that brought out her eyes. Her hair swept back, and when she saw him, she smiled. Not the careful, professional smile she wore at work, but something open and genuine. Ethan stood as she approached, and she greeted him with a quick kiss on the cheek that felt both natural and terrifying. You look beautiful, he said. You clean up pretty well yourself. Vivian's eyes swept over him, taking in the charcoal suit he'd borrowed from his brother-in-law. Should we get a table? They were seated in a corner booth, half hidden by a screen of decorative bamboo. The waiter brought menus and water, and then they were alone. So, Vivian said, folding her hands on the table, this is new territory. What do you mean? This, us, out in public, not hiding, not pretending. She looked around the restaurant. I keep expecting someone to recognize me and pull out a camera. Would that be so bad? It would be complicated, but no, not bad. Vivian met his eyes. I'm tired of hiding, Ethan. I've spent my whole life being careful about who I'm seen with, what I say, how I present myself, and I'm realizing that all that caution didn't protect me from loneliness. It just made it more bearable. What changed? You did. You saw me, really saw me, and you didn't run. You didn't try to use it against me or turn it into leverage. You just stayed. Her voice softened. No one's ever done that before. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now, but when this gets harder, and it will get harder, you might change your mind. I might, Ethan admitted, but I don't think I will. They ordered dinner and settled into easier conversation. Vivian told him about growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the daughter of a factory worker and a school secretary, how she'd fought her way to an Ivy League education and then into finance through sheer stubborn determination. Ethan shared pieces of his own story, his quiet childhood in Queens, his father's death, the scholarship that got him through college, the marriage that had seemed right until it wasn't. Do you regret it? Vivian asked. The marriage? Parts of it. I regret that I couldn't give her what she needed, that I wasn't enough to make her stay. Ethan paused. But I don't regret Lucy, and I don't regret learning what I'm not willing to compromise on. Which is? Honesty, presence, showing up for the people who matter. He looked at Vivian. I can't be with someone who needs me to be more than I am, who wants a bigger life, a better version, a fantasy. I'm just this. A single dad who works too much and worries about his daughter and doesn't have anything impressive to offer except the truth. Vivian's eyes were bright. That's more than you think. Is it enough? For me? Yes. The words settled between them, solid and certain. Ethan felt something in his chest loosen, some knot of fear he'd been carrying since the divorce. They finished dinner and ordered dessert, lingering over coffee and the kind of conversation that meandered without destination. Vivian made him laugh with a story about a disastrous board meeting where the projector had died, and she'd had to present a billion-dollar acquisition using napkin sketches. Ethan told her about Lucy's recent obsession with becoming a marine biologist, which had lasted exactly 3 days before she decided she wanted to be an astronaut instead. She sounds wonderful, Vivian said. She is. Exhausting, brilliant, terrifying in her clarity. Ethan smiled. She asked me today if you make me happy. Vivian's expression shifted. What did you tell her? The truth. That I think so. You think so? I'm happy right now, Ethan said carefully. But I don't know what this is yet. What we are. If it's real or just a moment. Do you want it to be real? The question hung in the air, weighted with possibility. Ethan thought about all the reasons to say no, the complications, the risks, the way this could destroy everything he'd built. But he also thought about Vivian's hand in his, the way she looked at him like he mattered, the feeling of being seen. Yeah, he said quietly. I do. Vivian's smile was radiant. Then let's make it real. They left the restaurant just after 10 and walked through the quiet streets of Tribeca. The night was cold, and Vivian shivered slightly. Ethan shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without thinking. Thank you, she said, pulling it closer. You're welcome. They walked in silence for a while, their breath misting in the air. Ethan was acutely aware of Vivian beside him, the warmth of her presence, the occasional brush of her shoulder against his. It felt surreal, like something out of someone else's life. Can I ask you something? Vivian said eventually. Always. Are you scared? Ethan considered lying, then decided against it. Terrified. Of what? That this won't work, that we'll try and fail, and I'll have risked everything for nothing. That Lucy will get attached to you, and then you'll realize I'm not worth the complication. He paused. That I'll fall in love with you, and you'll leave. Vivian stopped walking. They were standing on a quiet corner, the streetlight casting long shadows. She turned to face him, her expression serious. I can't promise we'll work, she said. I can't promise this won't be hard, or that people won't try to tear us apart. But I can promise you this. She took both his hands. I'm not leaving because it gets complicated. I'm not leaving because you have a daughter, or because your life is small, or because you're not impressive enough. I'm here because you're real, because you see me, and because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human instead of just successful. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Vivian, I'm falling for you, Ethan. I think I have been since the night you told me my dating profile was a job posting. And I know that's fast and probably reckless, but I'm tired of being careful. I want this. I want you. And I'm willing to fight for it. Ethan stared at her, this brilliant, formidable woman who ran a billion-dollar company and could have anyone she wanted, and she was choosing him, scared, careful, ordinary him. I'm falling for you too, he said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. And it scares the hell out of me. But I don't want to stop. Vivian smiled, and then she kissed him. It wasn't tentative or careful. It was certain and deep and full of everything they'd been holding back for weeks. Ethan pulled her closer, one hand sliding into her hair, and Vivian made a soft sound against his mouth that sent heat through his entire body. They stood there on the empty street corner, the city humming around them, and kissed like they were the only two people in the world. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Vivian rested her forehead against his. That was worth waiting for, she murmured. Yeah, Ethan agreed, his heart pounding. It really was. They stood there for another moment, reluctant to let go. Then Vivian stepped back, straightening his collar with a small smile. You should get home. Lucy's waiting. I know. Text me when you get there? I will. Vivian handed him back his jacket, and Ethan hailed her a cab. Before she got in, she turned and kissed him once more, quick and sweet. Thank you for tonight, she said. Thank me? For what? For being brave enough to try. Then she was gone, and Ethan was standing alone on the street, his lips still tingling, his mind spinning. He made it home just after 11. Rachel was waiting, perched on the couch with a knowing grin. You kissed her, didn't you? Ethan tried to look innocent. What? You have that look, the I just kissed someone and my brain stopped working look. Rachel laughed. I'm happy for you, Ethan. Really, you deserve this. It's complicated. The good things usually are. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door. Just don't overthink it, okay? Let yourself be happy. After she left, Ethan checked on Lucy, fast asleep, her shark book abandoned on the nightstand and then collapsed onto his own bed. His phone buzzed. Vivian. I can't stop smiling. This is very unprofessional of me. Ethan. Same. I think I'm in trouble. Vivian. Good trouble or bad trouble? Ethan. The best kind. Vivian. Get some sleep. Dream about me. Ethan. I have a feeling I won't be able to help it. He set the phone down and stared at the ceiling, replaying the kiss over and over in his mind. He'd taken the leap, jumped off the cliff, and instead of falling, he was flying. The question was how long before he hit the ground. The ground came up faster than Ethan expected. Monday morning, he arrived at work to find an email from HR waiting in his inbox. Subject line: Mandatory Ethics Review. His stomach dropped as he read the message requesting his presence at 2 p.m. for a routine compliance interview. Routine? Right. Nothing about this felt routine. He forwarded the email to Vivian without comment. She replied within 60 seconds. Vivian. Don't panic. This is Marcus making noise. Answer their questions honestly and it'll be fine. Ethan. And if they ask about us? Vivian. Tell them the truth. We're seeing each other. You don't report to me anymore. We haven't violated any policies. Ethan. That won't stop the rumors. Vivian. Let me worry about the rumors. You just focus on getting through the interview. Easy for her to say. Vivian had spent 2 decades building armor against public opinion. Ethan had spent 3 years trying to be invisible. The HR office was on the 40th floor, deliberately separate from the executive suite. Ethan took the elevator down at 1:55 and found himself in a waiting area that looked designed to make people nervous. Uncomfortable chairs, fluorescent lighting, motivational posters about integrity that felt vaguely threatening. At precisely 2 o'clock, a woman in her mid-50s appeared in the doorway. Helen Reeves, head of human resources, someone Ethan had met exactly once during his initial onboarding. Mr. Cole, she said, extending her hand, thank you for coming. Like he'd had a choice. She led him into a conference room where a younger man sat with a laptop open, Jonathan Park from legal. This was already worse than Ethan had anticipated. HR and legal together meant someone had filed an actual complaint, not just raised concerns. Please sit, Helen said, gesturing to a chair across from them. Can we get you water? Coffee? I'm fine. Helen folded her hands on the table, her expression professionally neutral. I want to start by assuring you that this is purely informational. You're not being accused of anything. We're simply following up on some concerns that were brought to our attention. What concerns? We've received information suggesting that you may be involved in a personal relationship with Ms. Cross. Helen's tone remained even. Given that she was your direct supervisor until recently, we need to establish a timeline and ensure that no ethical boundaries were crossed. Ethan kept his breathing steady. Who filed the complaint? That information is confidential, but I can tell you the concerns are being taken seriously. Marcus. It had to be Marcus. Ethan thought about the way he'd smiled when he brought up Lucy, the casual cruelty in his voice. This was retaliation, pure and simple. Ms. Cross and I are seeing each other, Ethan said carefully. We've been on a few dates, but nothing happened while I reported to her directly. The restructuring that moved me out from under her supervision happened first. Jonathan typed something on his laptop. When did the personal relationship begin? Define begin. When did you first discuss the possibility of dating? Ethan thought back to that night on the roof, to Vivian's admission that she'd rather be talking to him than any of her dates. About a month ago, late September. And when did you start reporting to Mr. Chen instead of Ms. Cross? October 15th, when the restructuring was announced. Helen leaned forward slightly. So there was a 2-week period where you were discussing a personal relationship while still under Ms. Cross's direct supervision. We discussed the possibility. We didn't act on it until after the restructuring. Can you define act on it? Ethan felt heat rising in his face. We didn't start dating until my reporting structure changed. We were careful about that. But you had feelings for her before then, Jonathan said, not looking up from his laptop. Feelings that might have influenced her decision to restructure the division and promote you. There it was, the real accusation. Not that they'd violated policy, but that Vivian had created a promotion to solve a personal problem. The division needed a director of strategic analysis, Ethan said, keeping his voice level. I was the most qualified person for the role. My performance reviews speak for themselves. Your performance reviews written by Ms. Cross, Helen pointed out gently. And before her, by the previous division head. I've been here 3 years. My track record existed before Vivian and I started seeing each other. Helen exchanged a glance with Jonathan, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then she said, Mr. Cole, I want to be direct with you. The concern isn't whether you're qualified. It's whether the appearance of impropriety undermines confidence in the company's promotion process. Even if you did nothing wrong technically, the optics are problematic. So what are you saying? I'm saying that we need to consider carefully how this looks. A CEO creating a position for someone she's romantically involved with, even if the involvement began after the restructuring, raises questions about judgment and fairness. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. Then investigate. Look at my work. Compare it to other senior analysts. You'll see I earned this. I believe you did, Helen said, and she sounded sincere. But belief and proof are different things in situations like this. And right now we have a partner who's raising concerns, and we have to take those concerns seriously. Marcus Chen has been gunning for partner for years, Ethan said, not bothering to hide his frustration. He finally got it, and now he's trying to consolidate power by taking out anyone he sees as competition or anyone associated with people he doesn't like. This isn't about ethics, it's about politics. Nevertheless, Jonathan said, the complaint has been filed. We have to investigate. Ethan sat back in his chair, feeling trapped. So what happens now? We'll continue gathering information, Helen said. We'll speak with Ms. Cross, review the circumstances around the restructuring, and make a determination about whether any policies were violated. In the meantime, I'd advise you to maintain professional boundaries at work and avoid any situations that could be perceived as inappropriate. We're already doing that. Good. Then you have nothing to worry about. Helen stood, signaling the end of the interview. Thank you for your time, Mr. Cole. We'll be in touch if we need any follow-up. Ethan left the conference room feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. He took the stairs back to his floor instead of the elevator, needing the physical movement to burn off the anger and anxiety churning in his gut. His phone buzzed as he reached his desk. Vivian. How did it go? Ethan. About as well as expected. They're investigating, talking to you next. Vivian. I know, Helen just called. I'm meeting with them tomorrow. Ethan. I'm sorry. Vivian. Don't be. This isn't your fault. It's Marcus being Marcus. Ethan. Maybe we should cool things off, just until this blows over. There was a long pause before her next message. Vivian. Is that what you want? Ethan stared at the question, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. What did he want? He wanted this to be simple. He wanted to date Vivian without worrying about HR investigations and office politics and whether his daughter would be collateral damage. He wanted to rewind 3 months and stay invisible and safe. But he also wanted Vivian, wanted the way she saw him, the way she made him feel seen, wanted the possibility of something real. Ethan. No, but I don't want to make this harder for you. Vivian. You're not. Marcus is. And I'm not giving him the satisfaction of letting him control my personal life. Ethan. Even if it costs you. Vivian. Especially then. Ethan closed his eyes and took a breath. Then he typed. Okay. Then we keep going. Vivian. Together? Ethan. Together. That night, after Lucy was asleep, Ethan sat in his living room with a beer he wasn't drinking and thought about everything that could go wrong. HR could determine the promotion was improper and rescind it. Marcus could escalate the complaint to the board. The story could leak to the press, and Vivian's reputation could take a hit. His own career could be destroyed before it really started. And Lucy. What would happen to Lucy if this all fell apart? She was already asking questions, already sensing that something had shifted in his life. How would she handle it if he lost his job, if they had to move, if everything she counted on disappeared? His phone rang. Vivian. Hey, he answered. You're spiraling, she said without preamble. I can feel it from here. How did you know? Because I'm doing the same thing. I've been sitting in my apartment for the last hour running worst-case scenarios. Her voice softened. Talk to me, Ethan. What are you thinking? That this is getting out of control, that Marcus is going to keep pushing until something breaks, that we're being reckless. We are being reckless, Vivian agreed, but I don't think that makes us wrong. What if we are, though? What if we're so caught up in this that we can't see we're making a mistake? Then we're making it together. Vivian paused. Do you want to stop? Really want to, I mean. Not because you're scared, but because you actually believe we're wrong for each other. Ethan thought about the question. He thought about the kiss on the street corner, about Vivian's hand in his at dinner, about the way she'd looked at him when she said she was falling for him. No, he said quietly, I don't want to stop. Neither do I, so we figure it out. We're both smart people, Ethan. We can navigate this. What if smart isn't enough? Then we get creative. He could hear the smile in her voice. I didn't build a company from nothing by playing it safe, and I'm not going to lose you because Marcus Chen wants to play power games. Ethan felt some of the tension in his chest ease. You're very confident for someone who's being investigated by HR. I'm confident because I know we didn't do anything wrong. And more importantly, I know you're worth fighting for. Vivian's voice turned serious. But I need you to be honest with me. If this gets too hard, if it starts affecting Lucy, you need to tell me. I meant what I said about not wanting to hurt her. I will. Promise me. I promise. They talked for another hour, the conversation drifting from the investigation to easier topics. Books they were reading, plans for the weekend, whether the Yankees had any chance next season. It was normal and comfortable and exactly what Ethan needed. When they finally said goodnight, he felt steadier. Not unworried, but less alone. The investigation dragged on for 2 weeks. Helen and Jonathan interviewed half a dozen people, reviewed emails, examined the timeline of the restructuring. Ethan went through his days in a state of low-grade anxiety, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Marcus, meanwhile, made himself increasingly visible. He started attending meetings he'd never shown interest in before, asking pointed questions about division resources and personnel decisions. He made a show of being collaborative and professional, but Ethan could see the calculation beneath it. Marcus was building a case, gathering allies, positioning himself. Then, on a gray November afternoon, Helen called Ethan back to her office. We've completed our investigation, she said, gesturing for him to sit. Jonathan was there again, laptop open, expression unreadable. Ethan's heart hammered. And? We found no evidence of policy violations, Helen said. The timeline supports your account. The personal relationship began after the restructuring, and your qualifications for the director role are well documented. Ethan felt relief wash through him. So this is over? Not quite. Helen's expression turned careful. While you didn't violate any specific policies, the situation still presents optics challenges. The board has requested that we implement additional oversight. What kind of oversight? Your performance reviews will now be conducted by Mr. Chen and validated by an external consultant. Any future promotions or compensation changes will require board approval, and both you and Ms. Cross will be required to attend quarterly ethics training. It was humiliating, punitive in everything but name. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. Is this standard procedure? It's standard procedure when there are concerns about conflicts of interest, Jonathan said. Think of it as protective measures for everyone involved. And if I refuse? Helen's expression didn't change. Then we'd have to reconsider whether you're a good fit for the organization. There it was, the real message. Accept the conditions or leave. Ethan thought about arguing, about pointing out how unfair this was, how it punished him for something that wasn't technically wrong. But he knew it wouldn't matter. HR wasn't interested in fairness. They were interested in covering the company's liability. Fine, he said. I'll accept the conditions. Excellent. Helen smiled, relieved. I'm glad we could resolve this amicably. And for what it's worth, Mr. Cole, I do believe you earned your promotion. I just hope you understand why we have to be careful. I understand. He left the office feeling hollowed out. The investigation was over, but the damage was done. Everyone would know about the special oversight, about the quarterly ethics training, Everyone would draw their own conclusions. Vivian was waiting for him when he got back to his floor. She took one look at his face and said, "My office, now." He followed her upstairs and closed the door behind them. "What happened?" she asked. Ethan told her about the conditions, about the oversight and the training and the implicit threat if he refused. Vivian's expression darkened with each word. "That's bullshit," she said when he finished. "Absolute bullshit. You didn't do anything wrong, and they're treating you like a criminal. It's not about right or wrong. It's about protecting the company. It's about Marcus getting exactly what he wanted. You under scrutiny, me looking bad, and everyone questioning whether we belong together." Vivian started pacing. "I should fight this. Go to the board. Make them see how unfair this is." "Don't." She stopped and looked at him. "Why not?" "Because fighting will make it worse. It'll look like you're using your position to protect me, which is exactly what they're worried about." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "We take the oversight. We do the training. We prove them wrong by doing excellent work and keeping our heads down. That could take years." "I know." Vivian crossed to where he stood and took his hands. "I hate this. I hate that they're punishing you for being with me." "They're punishing us both," Ethan corrected. "You have to deal with this too." "I can handle it. I've been handling worse for 20 years. Her grip tightened. "But I can't handle the idea that this is hurting you, that you're suffering because I was selfish enough to push for this." "You weren't selfish. You were honest. And I made my own choice." Ethan looked at her directly. "I'm not backing out, Vivian. The oversight is annoying, but it's manageable. What I can't manage is the thought of losing you because we're too afraid to fight for this." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Vivian studied his face for a long moment. Then she pulled him into a hug, fierce and tight. Ethan wrapped his arms around her and breathed in the scent of her perfume, letting himself take comfort in the solid reality of her presence. "We're going to get through this," she murmured against his shoulder. "I know. And Marcus is going to regret starting this war." Ethan pulled back to look at her. "What are you planning?" "Nothing dramatic, just reminding him that I didn't become CEO by being nice." Vivian's smile was sharp. "He wants to play politics? Fine, but he's playing against someone who wrote the playbook." Is. Over the next few weeks, Ethan watched Vivian work with quiet admiration. She didn't confront Marcus directly or make a scene. Instead, she did something far more effective. She made him irrelevant. She restructured the partnership hierarchy, creating new committees that diluted Marcus's influence. She assigned him to projects that were important but unglamorous, the kind of work that kept him busy without giving him visibility. She praised his contributions publicly while privately routing key decisions around him. It was masterful and subtle, and Marcus didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. Meanwhile, Ethan threw himself into his new role. He delivered impeccable work, exceeded every metric, and made sure that Marcus's oversight reviews showed nothing but excellence. The quarterly ethics training was tedious and condescending, but he endured it without complaint. And through it all, he and Vivian kept seeing each other. They were careful. Dinner at her apartment instead of restaurants, weekend mornings at the farmer's market when the office crowd was sleeping in, quiet evenings reading on her couch while rain pattered against the windows. It wasn't the grand romance Ethan had once imagined for himself, back when he was young enough to believe love should be easy. But it was real. It was theirs, and it mattered. Lucy noticed the change in him. She didn't say anything directly, but she started asking more questions about his evenings out, about the friend from work he kept mentioning. Ethan knew he'd have to tell her eventually, but he wanted to be sure first, sure that this was lasting, sure that Vivian wouldn't vanish when things got too complicated. Then came the Saturday in early December when everything shifted. Ethan had been seeing Vivian for 2 months, and they'd fallen into a comfortable rhythm, but they'd been careful to keep their worlds separate. Vivian hadn't met Lucy, and Ethan hadn't brought her into his home. It felt safer that way, less likely to cause damage if things fell apart. But that Saturday, Rachel called with an emergency. Her son was sick, her husband was out of town, and she needed someone to watch him while she took him to urgent care, which meant Ethan couldn't watch Lucy. He was about to cancel his plans with Vivian when Lucy looked up from her cereal and said, "You could just bring me with you." Ethan froze. "What?" "To your friend's house. I could come with you." Lucy's expression was matter of fact. Unless you don't want me to meet her. It's not that I don't want you to. Then what is it? Ethan didn't have a good answer. The truth was he'd been protecting himself more than Lucy, keeping the two most important parts of his life separate so that if one fell apart, the other would remain intact. But Lucy was looking at him with those knowing dark eyes, waiting. "Let me make a call," he said. He stepped into the hallway and dialed Vivian's number. "Hey," she answered. "I was just about to start making lunch. Are you on your way?" "There's been a complication. My sister had an emergency, and I can't get a sitter for Lucy." Ethan took a breath. "She wants to come with me, to meet you." There was a pause on the other end. Then Vivian said, "Are you ready for that?" "I don't know. Are you?" "I've been ready since the beginning, Ethan. I told you I wasn't afraid of your life being complicated. That includes the 7-year-old at the center of it." Ethan closed his eyes, feeling something settle in his chest. "Okay, we'll be there in an hour." "Perfect. I'll make enough pasta for 3. When Ethan returned to the kitchen, Lucy was watching him with an expression that was far too knowing for her age. "She said yes, didn't she?" Lucy said. "How did you— Never mind." Ethan shook his head. "Yes, she said yes. But Lucy, I need you to understand something. This person is important to me, and I need you to be yourself but also be kind." "I'm always kind. You're always honest. There's a difference." Lucy considered that. "I'll try to be both." It was the best he was going to get. They took the subway to Vivian's apartment in the Upper West Side. Lucy pressed against the window, watching the tunnel lights blur past. She'd been quiet since they left, which made Ethan more nervous than if she'd been asking 1,000 questions. Lucy's silences meant she was thinking, processing, forming opinions she'd deliver with surgical precision when the moment was right. "You okay?" he asked as they climbed the stairs from the subway platform. "Why wouldn't I be?" "You're quiet." "I'm always quiet when I'm meeting someone new. I'm observing." Lucy looked up at him. "Does she know that? That I observe?" "I told her you're smart and honest." "Good. I don't like lying." They walked 3 blocks to a beautiful pre-war building with a green awning and a doorman who greeted them with professional warmth. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt interminable, and Ethan found himself smoothing down Lucy's hair, straightening her jacket before catching himself and stopping. "I look fine, Dad," Lucy said, amused. "I know, sorry." "You're nervous." "A little." "Why? You already like her." "Because you haven't met her yet. And what you think matters." Lucy considered that as the elevator doors opened. That's a lot of pressure to put on a 7-year-old. You're not a normal 7-year-old. Fair point. Vivian's apartment was at the end of the hall. Ethan knocked, and the door opened almost immediately. Vivian stood there in jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair pulled back, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. "Hi," she said, her eyes going immediately to Lucy. "Hi," Lucy replied, studying Vivian with the same intense focus she brought to her shark books. "I'm Vivian." She extended her hand formally, treating Lucy like an adult rather than a child. "It's nice to finally meet you. Your dad talks about you all the time." Lucy shook her hand solemnly. "Does he tell you about my shark research?" "He does. He said you're currently interested in great whites." "I was. Now I'm studying hammerheads. Did you know their heads are shaped like that so they can have 360-degree vision?" "I didn't know that. That's fascinating." Lucy nodded, apparently satisfied with this response, and walked into the apartment like she owned it. Ethan met Vivian's eyes over his daughter's head, and she gave him a small, encouraging smile. The apartment was beautiful. High ceilings, hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Central Park. But it was also warm, lived in, full of books and art, and the kind of comfortable furniture that invited you to stay a while. Lucy made a beeline for the bookshelf, scanning titles with her usual intensity. "You have Jane Austen," she announced. "I do. Do you like her?" "I'm 7. I haven't read her yet. But Dad says when I'm older, I'll like Emma because she's bossy and thinks she knows everything." Lucy turned to look at Vivian. "Are you bossy?" "Lucy," Ethan said, mortified. But Vivian laughed. "Sometimes, especially at work, but I'm trying to be less bossy in the rest of my life." "That's good. Dad says being bossy is only useful if you're actually right about things. Your dad is very wise. Lucy returned her attention to the bookshelf, and Vivian walked over to Ethan, lowering her voice. She's incredible, she whispered. She's terrifying. That too. Vivian squeezed his hand. But this is going okay, right? So far, but we're only 5 minutes in. They moved to the kitchen, where Vivian had pasta dough resting on the counter and a pot of water beginning to boil. Lucy climbed onto a stool at the kitchen island, watching with interest as Vivian began rolling out the dough. Can I help? Lucy asked. Absolutely. Have you made pasta before? No, we usually eat the kind from boxes. Nothing wrong with that. But fresh pasta is fun to make. Here, wash your hands and I'll show you. For the next hour, Ethan watched as Vivian taught Lucy how to roll dough, cut it into even strips, and hang the pasta to dry. Lucy asked 100 questions. Why this flour instead of that one? Why cold water instead of warm? How did Vivian learn to cook? And Vivian answered each one with patience and genuine interest. There was no condescension, no talking down, just two people sharing a skill. My grandmother taught me, Vivian said as she demonstrated the proper way to fold the dough. She was from Italy, and she believed that good pasta could solve most problems. Could it solve Dad's problems? Lucy asked, too perceptive as always. Vivian glanced at Ethan, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly, giving her permission to be honest. I don't know about all of them, Vivian said carefully, but it might help with some. Sometimes when things are complicated, it helps to slow down and do something simple with your hands. It gives your brain room to breathe. Is that why you cook? Yes. When work gets stressful, I come home and make pasta. It reminds me there are things I can control, even when everything else feels chaotic. Lucy absorbed this, her small hands working the dough with surprising competence. Do you get stressed a lot? More than I'd like. Because of your job? Sometimes. Sometimes because of other things. Like dating my dad? The question hung in the air. Ethan felt his stomach drop, but Vivian didn't flinch. Yes, she said simply. Sometimes dating your dad is stressful, but not in a bad way. More like a good kind of stress. The kind that comes from caring about something that matters. Lucy looked up at her, flour dusting her hands. Do you care about him? Very much. More than your job? Vivian set down her rolling pin and gave Lucy her full attention. That's a complicated question. My job is important to me. I've worked very hard to build my company, but your dad... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Your dad reminds me that there's more to life than work. That connection and honesty and showing up for people matter just as much as success. Lucy considered this. Good answer. Thank you. Can I ask you a question? Okay. Are you worried about me? About me being in your dad's life? Ethan held his breath. This was the moment. The one he'd been dreading. Lucy didn't lie, didn't soften things to be polite. If she didn't like Vivian, she'd say so. Lucy thought for a long moment, her eyes serious. I'm not worried about you being in his life. I'm worried about you leaving. The honesty of it hit Ethan like a punch to the chest. He started to intervene, to soften the blow, but Vivian held up a hand. That's a fair thing to worry about, she said quietly. People leave sometimes. Your mom left, and that probably made you think that's what people do when things get hard. She said she needed more than we could give her, Lucy said, her voice small. She said our life was too small. Vivian knelt down so she was at eye level with Lucy. Then she was wrong. Not about needing something different, people sometimes need different things, but about your life being too small. There's nothing small about what you and your dad have built together. It's honest and real and full of love. And anyone who can't see that is missing out. So you're not going to leave? I can't promise that nothing will ever change. Life is complicated, and sometimes things don't work out the way we hope. But I can promise you this. Vivian's voice was steady, certain. I'm not leaving because I think your life is too small. I'm not leaving because things get hard. And I'm not leaving because I found something better. If things don't work out between your dad and me, it won't be because I didn't think you both were worth staying for. Lucy stared at her for a long moment. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied. Okay. Okay? Yeah, you can keep dating my dad. Vivian smiled, genuine and warm. Thank you. That means a lot. They finished making the pasta and sat down to eat. The conversation flowed easily, Lucy telling stories about school, Vivian sharing carefully edited tales from her own childhood, Ethan watching the two most important people in his life find their rhythm together. It felt surreal and perfect and terrifying all at once. After lunch, Lucy discovered Vivian's collection of old novels and curled up in an armchair with a copy of Little Women, declaring that she wanted to see if Beth really died, or if that was just something kids said to scare each other. Vivian and Ethan cleaned up the kitchen in comfortable silence. That went well, Vivian said quietly, rinsing plates. She likes you. I like her. She's remarkable, Ethan. You've done an incredible job raising her. I've done my best. It doesn't always feel like enough. It's more than enough. Vivian dried her hands and turned to face him. Can I tell you something? Always. I was terrified of today, of meeting her, because I knew if she didn't like me, that would be it. There's no competing with your daughter, nor should there be. And now? Now I understand why you're the man you are, why you're careful and kind and put honesty above everything else. You learned it from her just as much as she learned it from you. Ethan felt his throat tighten. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. It's just the truth. They stood there in the kitchen, close enough to touch, and Ethan felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just falling anymore. This was landed, rooted, real. I love you, he said, the words coming out before he could stop them. Vivian's eyes widened. What? I love you. I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I love you. The way you make me feel seen, the way you showed up for Lucy today, the way you fight for what matters, all of it. I love all of it. Vivian stepped closer, her hand coming up to cup his face. I love you too. I have for weeks, but I was afraid to say it, afraid it would scare you off. I'm already scared. Might as well be scared and in love. She laughed, and then she kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. From the living room came Lucy's voice. I can see you, you know. The kitchen isn't that far away. They broke apart, both laughing. Ethan called back. Sorry, we'll be more discreet. You don't have to be discreet. Just don't be gross. Define gross, Vivian said, amused. I'll know it when I see it. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, the three of them, and it felt like a glimpse of something Ethan had stopped believing was possible. A future. A family. Not the one he'd planned, but maybe something better. When it was time to leave, Lucy hugged Vivian goodbye, quick and fierce, and whispered something Ethan couldn't hear. Vivian whispered something back and Lucy nodded, satisfied. In the elevator, Ethan asked, What did she say to you? That's between me and Lucy. Seriously? Seriously. She made me promise not to tell. Lucy grinned up at him. She's good at keeping secrets. I like that. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. The oversight from HR continued, but Ethan's performance reviews were flawless, giving Marcus no ammunition. Vivian continued her subtle campaign to marginalize him, and by January, Marcus was making noise about moving to a different firm, somewhere his talents would be better appreciated. Ethan and Vivian settled into a routine. Dinner at her place twice a week, Lucy joining them once a week, careful separation at work. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in late January when Helen from HR contacted Ethan again. This time, though, her tone was different. Mr. Cole, I wanted to inform you that Mr. Chen has resigned from the firm, effective immediately. Ethan felt shock ripple through him. He resigned? Yes. He's accepted a position with a competing firm, which means the oversight conditions we put in place are no longer necessary. You'll return to standard performance review protocols. Just like that? Just like that. I want to apologize, Mr. Cole. The enhanced scrutiny was difficult, I'm sure, but you handled it with professionalism and grace. Your work speaks for itself. After he hung up, Ethan sat staring at his desk, trying to process what had just happened. Marcus was gone. The investigation was over. The oversight was done. They were free. He texted Vivian immediately. Ethan, Marcus resigned. We're clear. Vivian. I know. I just got the call. Are you okay? Ethan. I think so. Still processing. Vivian. Come up. Let's talk. He found her standing by her office window, looking out at the city. When she heard him enter, she turned, and her expression was complicated. Relief and sadness mixed together. He reached out to me yesterday, she said. Marcus. Asked if I'd be a reference for him. What did you say? I said yes. I gave him a glowing recommendation. Vivian's smile was thin. Because that's what you do when you want someone gone. You help them find something better somewhere else. You orchestrated this. I created conditions that made him want to leave. There's a difference. She walked over to him. He was never going to stop, Ethan. He would have made your life miserable, looked for ways to undermine us, used every bit of leverage he had. So I made sure he had a better option. How long have you been planning this? Since the day he brought up Lucy. Vivian's eyes were hard. Nobody threatens you. Nobody threatens your daughter. I don't care if it's indirect or implied. It crossed a line. Ethan should have been bothered by the manipulation, by the calculated way Vivian had removed an obstacle. But all he felt was gratitude and love. Thank you, he said quietly. You don't have to thank me. I was protecting what's mine. She softened. What's ours? He pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in her office, holding each other, feeling the weight of the last few months finally lift. So what happens now? Ethan asked. Now we get to be normal, or as normal as we can be. I don't think we're very good at normal. Then we'll be our version of normal. Vivian pulled back to look at him. I want to take you and Lucy to dinner, somewhere public, somewhere we don't have to hide. People will talk. Let them. I'm tired of hiding. That Saturday, they went to a restaurant in Brooklyn. Not high-end, not secretive, just a good neighborhood place with excellent food and a warm atmosphere. Lucy ordered chicken parmesan and entertained them with a detailed explanation of shark migration patterns. People looked at them, recognized Vivian, but nobody approached. Nobody took pictures. They were just three people having dinner together. Afterward, they walked along the waterfront, Lucy running ahead to look at the boats while Ethan and Vivian followed hand in hand. This is nice, Vivian said. Yeah, it is. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop. Maybe there isn't another shoe. Vivian looked at him, hope and uncertainty in her eyes. You really think that? I think we've been through the worst of it. We survived HR investigations, office politics, Marcus making our lives hell. If we can get through that, we can get through anything. I hope you're right. Lucy ran back to them, breathless. Can we get ice cream? It's January, Ethan pointed out. So? Ice cream doesn't know what month it is. Vivian laughed. She makes a compelling argument. They found an ice cream shop still open and sat at a small table by the window, watching people pass by on the street. Lucy got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles and proceeded to get it all over her face. Ethan wiped it off with a napkin while Vivian watched, smiling. What? Ethan asked. Nothing. Just this. You, her, it's everything I didn't know I wanted. Lucy looked between them. Are you guys going to get married? Ethan choked on his ice cream. Lucy. What? It's a reasonable question. You love each other. People who love each other get married. Sometimes, Vivian said carefully, but sometimes they just are together, without needing to make it official. But you want to make it official, right? Lucy looked at Vivian directly. Because if you're going to be around, I'd rather know it's permanent. Vivian met Ethan's eyes across the table. He could see the question there, the uncertainty. They'd been together for 4 months. It was too soon for promises like that. Except it didn't feel too soon. It felt exactly right. Yes, Vivian said, still looking at Ethan. I want it to be permanent. Good, Lucy said, satisfied. Then you should probably propose or something. That's how it works, right? Lucy, Ethan said again, his face burning. I'm just saying, you're both smart people. You'll figure it out. She went back to her ice cream, leaving Ethan and Vivian staring at each other. She's not wrong, Vivian said quietly. About what? About figuring it out. About making this permanent. Vivian reached across the table and took his hand. I know it's fast. I know we probably should wait. Do things the conventional way. But I don't want conventional, Ethan. I want you. I want this. And I want to stop pretending we're not building something that's meant to last. Ethan felt his heart hammering. Are you proposing to me? Maybe. Is that allowed? I don't know. Nobody's ever proposed to me before. Then I'm setting the standard. Vivian's eyes were bright, nervous, hopeful. Marry me, Ethan. Not tomorrow, not next week, but someday, when we're ready, when Lucy's ready. But commit to it now. Commit to us. Lucy had stopped eating and was watching them with intense focus. Ethan thought about everything they'd been through. The late-night conversation in the office, the restructuring, the investigation, Marcus's campaign against them, the fear and risk and impossible choices. And he thought about Vivian teaching Lucy to make pasta, about the way she'd knelt down and promised not to leave, about the strength it took to fight for something when it would have been easier to walk away. Yes, he said, someday, when we're ready, I'll marry you. Vivian's smile was incandescent. Lucy pumped her fist in the air. Finally, she said. Can we go tell Aunt Rachel? She's going to be so excited. They finished their ice cream and walked back toward the subway, Lucy skipping ahead, Ethan and Vivian following hand in hand. The night was cold but clear, and the city felt full of possibility. We're really doing this, Vivian said. Yeah, we really are. Are you scared? Terrified. But also happy. Really happy. Me too. 6 months later, on a Saturday afternoon in July, they gathered in Central Park with 30 people who mattered. Not a grand wedding, not a society event. Just family and close friends, Lucy standing between them in a blue dress, holding the rings. Ethan's vows were simple. I promise to see you, to show up, to choose you every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Vivian's were just as straightforward. I promise to fight for us, to never let fear make my decisions, to build a life with you that's honest and real and big enough for all of us. When they kissed, Lucy cheered louder than anyone. The reception was at Vivian's apartment, their apartment now, Ethan and Lucy having moved in 2 months earlier. It was crowded and loud and perfect. Rachel cried happy tears. Vivian's mother, who'd flown in from Pennsylvania, told Ethan he was too good for her daughter and then hugged him so hard his ribs hurt. Lucy appointed herself official photographer and took approximately 300 pictures, most of them blurry. Late in the evening, after most of the guests had left, Ethan found Vivian on the balcony, looking out at the park. He wrapped his arms around her from behind and she leaned back against him. Happy? He asked. Deliriously. You? Yeah, really happy. Lucy's asleep on the couch. Your sister tried to move her to the bedroom, but she insisted on staying where she could see everyone. That sounds like her. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights shimmer. Ethan thought about the man he'd been a year ago, careful, contained, convinced that safety meant solitude. And he thought about the man he was now, still careful, still cautious, but open in ways he'd never imagined possible. Thank you, Vivian said quietly. For what? For taking a chance on me. For not running when it got hard. For letting me into your life. I should be thanking you. You're the one who asked for help with a dating profile and somehow ended up with me. Best decision I ever made. Vivian turned in his arms to face him. Deleting that app. Asking you to help me be honest. All of it. You never deleted the app, Ethan said, realization dawning. I never saw you do it. I deleted it the morning after our first real date. Didn't need it anymore. I'd found what I was looking for. Her eyes met his. Someone who saw me. Someone who stayed. Someone who chose me for who I am, not what I represent. I chose you because I love you. All of you. The brilliant CEO and the woman who makes pasta at midnight when she's stressed. The fierce protector and the person who was brave enough to admit she was lonely. Ethan cupped her face in his hands. You're everything, Vivian, and I'm the luckiest man alive. She kissed him, soft and deep, and Ethan felt the same certainty he'd felt that first night when she'd admitted she was falling for him. This was right. This was real. This was worth every risk, every hard conversation, every moment of fear. From inside the apartment, he heard Lucy's voice. "I'm not asleep, and you guys are being gross again." They broke apart, laughing. "We should probably check on her," Vivian said. "Probably." But they stayed on the balcony for another moment, holding each other, savoring the peace of finally being exactly where they belonged. Later that night, after everyone had left and Lucy was truly asleep in her new bedroom, Ethan and Vivian lay in bed in the quiet darkness. "What are you thinking about?" Vivian asked. "That a year ago, I was convinced my life was exactly the size it needed to be. Small and safe and predictable. And I was so wrong. What changed your mind?" "You did. You showed me that taking risks doesn't mean being reckless, that opening up to someone doesn't make you weak, that love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose every day, even when it's terrifying." "Especially when it's terrifying," Vivian murmured. "Yeah, especially then." He felt her smile against his shoulder. "For what it's worth, you changed me too. You reminded me that success without connection is just accomplishment, that being seen matters more than being admired, that the biggest risk isn't failing, it's never trying at all." So we both took the biggest risk. And we didn't fail. Not yet, anyway. "Ethan Cole, are you trying to jinx our marriage on our wedding day?" "I'm being realistic. Things could still go wrong. We could still mess this up." "We could," Vivian agreed, "but I don't think we will. You know why?" "Why?" "Because we're not doing this alone. We have each other, and that makes all the difference." Ethan pulled her closer, feeling the truth of her words settle into his bones. They'd survived investigations and office politics and Marcus Chen's attempts to tear them apart. They'd navigated the complicated process of blending their lives, of making room for each other and Lucy in a space that felt honest and real. They'd chosen each other, again and again, even when it would have been easier to walk away. And they'd keep choosing each other, tomorrow and the day after and every day that followed. That was what love was, Ethan realized, not the absence of fear, but the decision to be brave anyway. Not the guarantee of forever, but the commitment to try. Not finding someone perfect, but finding someone real, and deciding they were worth the risk. He'd spent 3 years building walls to protect himself and Lucy from getting hurt. And then Vivian had shown up with a dating profile that read like a job posting and asked him to help her be honest. And in teaching her vulnerability, he'd learned it himself. The biggest risk he'd ever taken wasn't falling in love. It was finally allowing himself to be seen in all his imperfect, complicated humanity and discovering that he didn't have to be alone anymore. He had Vivian, he had Lucy, he had a life that was messy and beautiful and exactly right. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt like he'd finally come home.